any margin for error at all. Magnus starts with white, Robert. Can he start with a win? Can he start with a bang? He is traditionally a slow starter, as we saw earlier today, but this is where he needs to move through the gears and bring his best.
He cannot afford to lose in this game with the white pieces against Alireza Firouzja. And I can't believe we're talking about Magnus like this. Magnus losing with white, but look at him. He does not seem to be the confident Magnus that has won so many world championship titles in all time controls. So he trots out the Trompowsky, this bishop on g5. It could take on f6 at some moment. But for Alireza, he is locked in. He is ready. And why should he be scared? He just took down Magnus Carlsen. Why not do it a second time in just a day?
Yeah, he did it in a 4-game match. He's young. He's full of energy. Can he do it in a 2-game match now? And this is a cousin of the London system. The white bishop moved to a different square, different ingredients, but similar pawn chain for Magnus Carlsen. This was the game he won, where he set up this triangle of pawns for white. He later pushed a pawn to f4. Will we see that happen again? Firouzja, spending a little bit more time than his opponent at these early stages, trades off a set of pawns. But what next? Will Black's light square bishop come out? Who do you think is going to be the happier at this early stage, Robert?
Well, I think that both sides are sort of feeling the other out. It is a new match. We just saw Alireza Firouzja take down Magnus Carlsen, but you have to forget about that if you're Firouzja too. It's not like you have a lead. You're starting from zeros. So the opening, it seems standard. Magnus Carlsen, he plays the Trompowsky even on the world's biggest stages. Let's not forget that World Championship match where he played the Trompowsky in the first game. And for Alireza, he has never won a Champions Chess Tour event. Is today going to be the first? He'll have to play sturdy defense in this first game, David. I was going to ask you, do you break the pin with g5 if you are Alireza? He says no. He's playing this more solidly.
Ooh, it becomes more tempting now, however, Robert. Once the white king has committed to that flank, it looks like a bit of a sitting target. So pawn to g5, I think, would be justified, but it depends on your mood. You do burn a lot of bridges. Firouzja staying flexible. Note how he's trying to provoke Magnus, bait Magnus into taking on f6, because that would only guide another black pawn towards the center, open up the semi-open g-file there, and Magnus wisely rejects that option. I've got to say, it's the Carlsbad structure. This pawn structure arises from a variety of openings. The Queen's Gambit declined, the Caro-Kann defense. Magnus is pretty much playing a Queen's Gambit declined with reverse colors. But he is the world-leading expert, I'm going to say, in this pawn structure, at least in modern times. So I think a lot for him to be positive about. But pawn to h5, Robert, this is Firouzja at least hinting that he might attack.
He can at some point continue throwing pawns up the board, but not yet. That point is not now because the knight on f3. And look at Firouzja go. He has this triangle of pawns here with a bishop. They're all working together quite nicely. It's an odd formation. I haven't seen it very often, but a bishop on f5 helping these pawns. Everything is defended. So no holes in Black's position in terms of targets to attack, but maybe some holes in terms of squares, the dark squares. We've talked about this theme a lot today, that maybe White can use those to his advantage if he can keep his king safe and sound.
Yeah, the pyramid of power. That's what I call that pawn chain, Robert. And actually, Firouzja is one of the leading experts in the Caro-Kann defense. And in the exchange variation of the Caro-Kann, this is a really common pattern. You see this exact pawn structure for Black. You see the bishop planted on this f5 square. So he's using kind of all of that experience, pattern recognition from a different opening, and he's utilizing it here against Magnus Carlsen. So queen to d2, I think you're right. Magnus is going for the dark squares. Watch out for Magnus to play a move like queen to f4 even on the next turn, offering a queen trade, trying to gain that grip, trying to capture towards the center. Yes, White's got double g pawns. They might be even better as doubled f pawns. But this is really the players just tiptoeing around each other. And just before I could say it, Firouzja, castles queenside, he means business. This is back to him kind of playing confidently, Robert. We saw a bit of a lull from him for those 2 games. He got the job done with a draw in the last one, but after a fast start, he quieted down. Now he's out for blood again.
It's like we're back to the very first game that we saw today between them, where it was a piece sacrifice for 3 pawns, and then Magnus, he went wrong deep down in that game where he had only one way out. So you see a4. Here comes the pawn storm from the white side. But the problem is the attack isn't clear. b5, the knight goes to a5, you have the dark squares under control. You usually start with your outermost passed pawn, and we can use that pawn as a battering ram, but as soon as there's pawn contact, black shuts the door. So that is the idea from the black side. And what black going for the attack, g5, h4, this pawn is frozen in place. So David, I actually see the makings of an attack from the black side a little bit more easily than I see them from the white side.
Fully agree. There's a hook after all, that white pawn on g3. You hook it open and you drag the h-file open for that black rook. Knight to h4, a good move, I feel, not just to block the advance, the continued inevitable advance of the black pawns, but also to hint that you might trade off a set of pieces and black's attack will lose a lot of power if that does indeed happen. How does he keep pedaling? How does he keep the momentum going, Robert, here for black? It looks like Firouzja's done everything possible to play ambitiously on the front foot, but what next?
What do they say? A knight on f8, there is no mate. A knight on f1, there is no fun. f3 controls this g3 pawn with the knight on f1. So you can boot the black knight out of there. So I love this move, knight h4, as you said, hinting at a capture on f5, stopping this h-pawn from pushing forward and opening up the gateway to kick this knight out of g4. Suddenly, my mind has changed. Magnus makes what seems like an innocuous move, but it carries several different ideas behind it. And for Alireza Firouzja, is it time to strike with a move like e5 in the center? There is risk to that as well, because as soon as you push pawns, you may not have the same control you did a turn ago.
Yeah, I don't think it's in his vocabulary, backward retreat, Robert. I think pawn to e5, just go for it. It's what the fans want to see. I think it's his best chance as well to keep setting these unorthodox kind of problems for Magnus Carlsen. Pawn to e5, just going for glory, breaking through the center. You can play on the king side later. I love that move, but yeah, also a move like knight to e7, maybe not Firouzja instinct, but kind of fundamentally sound. This definitely feels like the calm before the storm. Look at those accuracy levels. Both players playing provocative, ambitious chess, but also just really, really strong chess. So, okay, key moment. And Firouzja, clock time not on his side. A long think right now. Will it be a wrong think? That's the question.
Ooh, you're a rhyming man today. Ever the poet, you know it. David Howell is giving us some wisdom here. But it is true that sometimes players, they would make a move instantly in bullet. They then spend quite a lot of time when they have minutes on the clock. It is a critical moment. So for Firouzja, he needs to look if this capture is happening. And if he ever has to take away from the center, then that d5 pawn becomes a target. So you don't want to capture in that direction. e5 is striking, but it's committal. As I was saying, you don't want to capture away from the center. He actually invites this swap of pieces, David, and h4 becomes a threat. But how about these two pawns? Who is gaining the upper hand here?
Oof, I can see why he found this attractive. I can see why he found it tempting, Firouzja. Clear-cut plan. The queen is going to slide across to h7 as well. It's got all the outlines of a checkmating attack. But strategically, you're busted now, those ugly double pawns. And it's very much a race. You have to checkmate white before, for example, white's able to pick up the f5 pawn. I'm looking at moves like queen to d3 or bishop to d3, which is, I think, just been played. There we go. Taking the f5 pawn will undermine the integrity of the black knight's position, the beautiful post on g4. And if you can't deliver checkmate, your position might just collapse. So really huge decision there. I think in the right spirit, Robert, but maybe not the most accurate, maybe allowing a bit too much fun for white.
And I guess Alireza might have overestimated his attacking chances. The problem is that once the f5 pawn drops, white can actually prevent black from teaming up on the h-file. And moves like queen h7, you're not in time to strike with this pawn push to h4. In many of these positions, white can, in fact, play pawn to f3 to challenge this knight, to force it backwards, and then white can still march forward over on the other flank where the black king sits, lying in wait for the attack to commence. So bishop d3, excellent awareness from Magnus Carlsen. Alireza, once again, long think. Will it be a wrong think, David?
Yeah, and you're spinning out the rhymes too, Robert. I do feel that that long think he had, this going for g5, changing the structure, provoking white to kind of probe at these black weaknesses, he might be regretting it already, because look how much time he's using right now. He's given Magnus kind of something obvious, something clear to do. That's the last thing you want against a world-class player. Knight to e7, he's mixing up his plans now. He was going forward, he was going on the attack. now retreating, going defensive. It's kind of inconsistent. We talked about his form occasionally inconsistent for firouzja, but yeah, his play here, it just feels a bit wrong. And now I'm not sure what next for white. Attractive moves would be maybe either pawn to f3 if you really want to kick away that black knight. Rook to e6 looks super tempting as well. Just entering the black camp, going for some of those weak black pawns. More importantly, activating the other rook, the rook on a1 via the e-file, double stack them. Yeah, it's suddenly Magnus with a bunch of extra time. He's got obvious moves. firouzja, his queen's path towards the king side's also been cut off. I fear for black suddenly. Even though I love the kind of spirit behind these ideas, I think it might be going wrong, Robert.
And it goes to show how you as a chess player, everyone watching, you can't tunnel in. You can't just go for the attack because you have to watch out for the base of your position. The foundation is rocky. These double pawns are not healthy. As David just mentioned, I love this move, rook to e6. F3 can be played later, but if you play F3, there's no taking it back, and then the white knight is a bit stuck on F1. Otherwise, your pawn on G3 will be loose. So these are big decisions, and especially when you're touching a pawn, you can't take it back. So Magnus Carlsen thinking here, I don't think this is a wrong time for him to do so. He is up so much time, 3+ minutes, and rook e6, rook e1 to follow. White's play starts to come very obviously, and black is on the back foot.
Yeah, I think Magnus here, he's just calculating what would happen after a move like rook to e6 if firouzja just says, okay, I've had enough build-up, now it's time to actually enact my real plan. Pawn to h4, blow open the h-file, and some stuff to calculate there, I do admit. So I think very wise moment for Magnus to pause. He's looking into the future, trying to read firouzja's mind, trying to calculate with clarity exactly what he should be doing. But the eval bar here, I think, Robert, to be trusted. We sometimes don't say that in these complicated positions. It does feel like white's got enough control. I don't see the attack yet. I don't see black breaking through in time because white's kind of going to gain tempi. White's going to gain a lot of momentum, hitting that black knight on e7 first of all.
And this question mark here, I think it's really about the move 2 turns ago, that g5 pawn push. At this stage, it's difficult for black to play. Now the knight is kicked. It goes back, and both of our plans, David, kicking the knight and bringing the rook in for white to attack this loose pawn on f6. Rook e1 next. The harmony is there from the white side. And now h4, it just looks even less potent because the knight is on the wrong square. This knight on the rim is dimming black's attacking chances. That rook needs an open file, not a pawn and a knight in its path, especially if all of these pawns start collapsing on the king side over here. I think that black is in some trouble.
Yeah, definitely in some trouble. And again, it's all about that momentum. It's all about the initiative. You want to kind of be consistent. You want to keep throwing things forward at your opponent. As soon as you step back, give your opponent time. Yeah, Magnus now reasserting control. And pawn to f3, that move I wanted to mention, it did lose a bit of the eval, at least according to the bar, but makes Magnus's plan even more simple. It makes the black knight feel really clunky, really clumsy, and big threats now, hitting that black knight, kicking it to c8. I don't know what the rhyme is for the c8 square. We've talked about f8, f1, Robert. What's the rhyme for that? Black, I'm not going to call it a Steve, that black knight.
Yeah, that knight c8 might seal his fate. You're moving backwards when your whole plan was to unleash an attack. Where is that vicious onslaught? Where are you going after the white king? That white king, it's tucked away right now. And moves like h4 in the near future, I could probably just grab it as your knight is loose on h6. So there has not been this happy coordination of pieces for black. The ideas, they haven't been kind of in combination with one another. And now white is the one who is first to the attack, carving out light squares, and only white has a light square bishop. If you play b6 here, there's going to be future problems on these light squares. If you take, you're opening up a file in front of your king. David, this is as unpleasant as a position can get.
Ugh, yeah, he does play b6 out of necessity more than anything there. And I don't know how he does it, Robert. Every game, win or loss, Magnus somehow installs a pawn on h3 or a6 or h6, just those alpha zero type of ideas. Magnus is obsessed and he gets a lot of success from it. Look at the white knight now. This is a real steed, a real stallion jumping forward, hitting the d5 pawn. And it does feel like black is already on the brink of collapse. I'm looking at the clock, I'm looking at the board, and it's all going wrong. Queen d7, he's just inviting white to play the move he wanted to last turn. Knight takes d5. what does he have up his sleeve? Magnus is just going to go a pawn up. Material, be greedy here. Why not?
Greed usually isn't good, but in this particular position, I think white can snag the pawn, and Magnus Carlsen successfully does. So the pawn is captured, and wow, what a move from Alireza. Knight to e4. Magnus, he doesn't seem particularly impressed. I don't think he believes in it, but what an idea from the 20-year-old player, Alireza Firouzja. He has disconnected these white rooks from one another. That means that queen takes e6 can be played if white just tries to grab a quote-unquote free piece. That knight on e4, it doesn't drop. And so, as I look at this position, it's becoming tactical. And Magnus, he wanted full control. Alireza says, not so fast.
Wow, Alireza, we mentioned it. He's zoned in. He's so focused on this game. He wants it more than anything, this victory. Knight e4, what a cool move. Just chaos button indeed pressed. We see the eval bar. Magnus, whoa, rook sacrifice on b6. I was going to say he can give up material in a bunch of ways. I did not see this one. He's given up rook for bishop here, or rook for minor piece, Robert, but that black king is so open.
What is the count? That move was given a question mark. It's a very difficult position for black. This move makes a lot of sense, but I'm just trying to quickly count the material. Black has 5 pawns, white has 7, so 2 extra pawns for white. White has this bishop here. Black has this rook over here. So it's 2 pawns and a bishop for a rook. That's about even in terms of point value. But look at the king's safety. Black's king, not very safe, especially after this move b5. This knight will hop back to b4, and then it will jump forward to c6 with a check and a fork. White's king is tucked away. So, David, it was a fantastic exchange sacrifice there from Magnus. He responded excellently to some stellar tactics from Firouzja. So both players are playing quite well. It's just that Firouzja never got his attack off the ground. He was sort of stuck in place, and Magnus has been able to capitalize.
Yeah, Magnus really showing class when it counts, when it matters. I love that 3-step idea, Robert. Pawn to b5, knight back to b4, into c6. That's just a winning concept here. The black king will not survive the wrath of that white knight. And okay, he's giving up pawns, Magnus. He's at least opening up the black king even further, but he needs the breakthrough. Suddenly, we did that count, and things are getting dramatic. Magnus still down rook for bishop, but the pawns are dropping. Rook takes knight is a big threat. The white minor piece is a bit loose in the center. Magnus needs a knockout blow. Is that still retreating the knight back to b4? Is it trying to break the white rook into the 7th rank somehow? The recurring pattern of the rook on the 7th rank, always doing the business. Accuracy required. Magnus needs to stop, think, and calculate, because this is the type of advantage that's winning, but could disappear in one move.
It's no longer one-sided. Instead of just Magnus pressing forward, stealing a pawn, and playing safe, for example, rook to b1, black will give up the queen down here to get that loose knight on d5, and we're talking about 2 rooks versus a queen. Now, white's king is still safer, so you should be happy if you're Magnus Carlsen, but not thrilled, because at some point, a knight to g4 will eliminate the escape squares for the white king. So we're going to see some imbalances. I think that Magnus, he needs to strike quickly. I just said rook b1. Objectively, it might be good, but I would be a bit uncomfortable by that choice. Can I throw anything else out? I want to get my rook to e7, but David, as you pointed out correctly, this knight on d5 is loose. These decisions are not easy for Magnus, who dropped 1 pawn and could drop another in the future.
Yeah, really not easy for Magnus. I think he knows that rook b1, objectively, he's still doing well. That position you highlighted, the queen probably better than the uncoordinated black rooks, especially because black's king's still a target. But in balanced positions, that's where Firouzja does thrive. And the longer it goes without kind of landing that knockout punch and failing to checkmate the black king, the more nervous Magnus is going to get. We see it in terms of his time usage here, down under 3 minutes. I'm still predicting rook b1, Robert, because there's no other obvious moves that call out. Knight to b4, maybe the kind of backup plan if you don't see anything better. But wow, c4, dynamite on the board. It's a pawn sacrifice. He's doing it the brute force way. There's another path in for the white rook, Robert.
I love that move because without pawns, you open file. So if that black queen took that pawn c4, rook c1 would have hurt. Now, knight to b4, that move looks great. I mean, the c6 fork, we've already been talking about it. Now it hits the royal family. All of the pieces, the royal fork, hitting them with check, knight b4, exclamation point, and that could be the dagger.
that could be the final touch. Black now needs to cover the c6 square, needs to hope that Magnus jumps in at the wrong moment. Rook to c8, strictly obliged. I don't see anything else at all. Otherwise you resign, you get forked, and the game is up. But 17 seconds for firouzja. He does play that move. The problem is the white bishop can move. Rook e7 is coming. Pawn to c5 will blow open more lines. White's queen can move, threatening knight to c6. It feels like something is crumbling. Look at that poor black knight. All of the rhymes we come up with that we talk about really kind of applicable, really relevant right now. Black's defending with only a king and queen. It's not going to cut the mustard here, Robert. It looks almost game over.
Knight on h6 ain't in the mix, and that's part of why black is in trouble. And here, I like your c5 move a ton. It doesn't give black the obvious response. It's trying to set up knight c6 check with some deadly forks and trying to remove the guard of the queen on a5. So Magnus Carlsen, he's sitting and thinking, knight c6 check, probably winning for white, but he doesn't necessarily want to rush it, because if you start trading off too many pieces, maybe that gives black some faint hopes of survival. He goes for it. The evaluation bar, David, it really tanked quite a lot here, as black can scoop up this a6 pawn. We'll have even material.
Wow, it plummets. Magnus, he knows he was winning, or he knew he was winning, but he cashed in too soon. And now, Robert, this could be a turnaround. It could really turn. The black a pawn's alive, the black knight off the rim, off the h6 square. It's back in the mix. And, okay, one more move. I was going to say, if the black king came across to b6 into c5, black would have been totally fine, but Magnus's pawn's still rolling. I think he's just about evaluated this correctly. He's aided by the fact firouzja has no time. 7 seconds left. The pawns are running. Rook to e6 looks so strong right now, but Magnus, he didn't find the most incisive way. I think nerves are kicking in. The most accidents happen nearer the finishing line, and okay, could we still see this
The same time in the same way, giving up the rook because this pawn would promote. That was sick stuff from Magnus Carlsen, because other moves would have given black some chances, and Magnus, he played the move the blue arrow indicated. Perfect stuff from him.
Perfect play. Magnus Carlsen with a winning endgame now, but still how to push those pawns through. You don't want to get them blockaded on light squares. Don't allow the black king to come over. First, he boots the black knight out of the center, and now how to keep pushing. I don't think black is threatening to take the pawn on c5. There will be a check with rook to e8, but Magnus ticks under the 1 minute mark. King to f2. He's doing it the slow way. He's trying to be slow and sure about it, but now a check, Robert, and white's going to make a new queen.
There was really no stopping the win for Magnus Carlsen. Alireza plays a couple moves, but you could tell that look on his face. He can't believe what has happened, but the game is done. Magnus Carlsen wins the first game.